The call that weaponized my own voice against my family started with a simple, chillingly perfect three-word sentence. It was my voice, but the words were a lie. A digital ghost conjured from the ether to haunt the people I love most. If you find this story shocking and want to arm yourself against the most sophisticated scams happening today, please subscribe to the Real Life Scam Cases channel. The last 2 years, I've been building a small but passionate community around my podcast, Soundscapes of the City. I travel, I record the ambient noise of different neighborhoods, and I narrate my experiences. It's on every episode, on my Instagram story updates, on the little audio snippets I post to Twitter. I thought of it as a tool for connection, a way to share my world. I never imagined it could be stolen, copied, and repurposed as a weapon of extortion. The story of the scam doesn't start with me. It starts 500 miles away, in the quiet suburban home where I grew up with my parents, David and Linda. It was a Thursday afternoon. My dad, a retired engineer, was likely in his workshop, tinkering with a broken lawnmower. It was a portrait of peaceful retirement, a fragile snow globe of tranquility that was about to be shaken to its core. The landline rang, a sound increasingly reserved for political polling and, as it would turn out, for terror. My mom answered. "Hello, Mom." The voice that came through the receiver was mine. Not like mine. It was mine. Even the barely perceptible sigh of breath before I speak. It was so perfectly me that my mother's heart, conditioned by 28 years of love, didn't register a single flicker of doubt. "Chloe, honey, what's wrong? You sound awful." The voice on the other end was choked with sobs, punctuated by sharp, panicked gasps for air. "Mom, I'm in so much trouble." My mother's blood ran cold. She sank into the nearest kitchen chair, her hand flying to her chest. "What is it? What happened? Are you hurt?" "I was in an accident," my voice wailed. "I was driving downtown and I looked down at the GPS for just a second, and I hit someone, a woman. She was on a bicycle." The words tumbled out in a torrent of practiced hysteria. "The police are here. They said it was my fault. They're saying I was on my phone. She's hurt badly, Mom. They're taking her to the hospital." My dad heard the commotion and came in from the garage, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He saw my mother's face, ashen and horrified, and immediately knew something was terribly wrong. She motioned frantically for him to come closer, putting the phone on speaker. "And I don't have a lawyer," Clone cried. "They're going to arrest me. They're going to take me to jail." "Okay, honey, okay. Just calm down," my dad said. "Say anything to the police." No, you don't understand," the voice sobbed. "There's a man here. He said because she's a tourist and her injuries are serious, they can hold me on a felony charge. But he said there might be a way to handle this quietly, to keep it out of the system. He needs to talk to you." Before my parents could process, the crying voice was replaced by a new one. It was a man's voice, calm, authoritative, and radiating an aura of weary professionalism. "Mr. and Mrs. Evans," he began. "My name is John Garrison. I'm a court-appointed mediator. I'm here with your daughter. She's quite distraught." "As you can imagine, what is going on," my father demanded. "Is my daughter being arrested?" "That is one possible outcome," Mr. Garrison said smoothly, "and frankly, given the circumstances, the most likely one. We have an injured party, a clear case of distracted driving, and a very aggressive city prosecutor's office. However, the injured party and her husband are not from this country. They have no desire to get tied up in a lengthy American legal battle. They are willing to settle this civilly and not press criminal charges, provided their medical expenses are covered, and they receive compensation for their ruined vacation and her injuries. This would be an informal, immediate settlement. It was a brilliantly constructed trap, playing on their deepest fears, a felony charge, a ruined future for their only child, and offering a clean, quick solution. My dad asked, his engineer's brain already trying to calculate the variables. "Representative, once the funds are received, all parties will sign a liability waiver, and your daughter will be free to go. The entire matter will be concluded." My mother gasped. "It wasn't just sitting in their checking account. There is one more condition," Garrison continued, his voice hardening slightly. "This must be handled with absolute discretion. Given that we are bypassing the official criminal process, any communication about this to friends, to other family members, your silence, do you understand? The gag order." It's a classic tool in the scammer's playbook. But when it's delivered by a calm, authoritative voice, right after hearing your own daughter's hysterical sobs, it doesn't sound like a tactic. It sounds like a lifeline. Most importantly, Garrison said, his voice dropping to a confidential tone, you cannot contact Chloe on her cell phone. The police have it as part of the accident investigation. Any attempt to call her will alert them that we are attempting this settlement, and the deal will be off immediately. She will be arrested. Am I making myself clear? My father, a man who prided himself on his skepticism and logic, was completely cornered. The one piece of evidence that mattered, the sound of his daughter's terrified voice, was irrefutable. Every logical instinct he had was being drowned out by the primal paternal urge to protect his child. Yes, he said, his own voice tight. We understand. Where do we send the money? Garrison gave them wire transfer instructions, a name, a bank, an account number, a routing number. You have 90 minutes, he said. The couple is scheduled to fly home this evening. I'll stay on the line with your daughter and keep her calm. The line went quiet, but they didn't hang up. My parents were left in a silent kitchen, the ghost of my voice hanging in the air, a clock ticking down in their heads. What happened next was a blur of frantic activity. My dad grabbed his coat and car keys. They had savings, but they were in CDs and a brokerage account. Would require going to the bank in person. David, what if we can't get it in time? My mom cried, tears streaming down her face. We will, he said, his face a grim mask of determination, while the seed of the scam was working on them. The voice had been so real, the panic was real, the love was real. Editing audio for my next podcast episode. I was wearing noise-canceling headphones, deep in my own world. I had a phone call scheduled with my parents for 3:30 p.m., just a weekly check-in. It was a standing appointment we rarely missed. At 3:15 p.m., my dad was at the bank, standing in line, his heart hammering against his ribs. My mom was at home, staring at the silent phone, praying. In a moment of sheer desperation, wanting to offer some comfort, she picked up her cell phone and sent me a text. It was a message that, in retrospect, saved them. The text simply said, "We are at the bank getting the money. Don't worry. We love you so much." I saw the message pop up on my screen and stared at it, completely bewildered. It was so cryptic, so out of character for my mom, who usually texted in full, grammatically correct paragraphs. My first thought was that she'd texted the wrong person. I texted back, "What money, Mom? Is everything okay?" No reply, a knot of unease began to form in my stomach. I took off my headphones and looked at the clock. 3:25 p.m. I decided to call them a few minutes early. I dialed my dad's cell. He answered on the first ring, his voice sharp and stressed. "I'm working on it. Just give me a few more minutes." He thought I was the scammer, calling to apply. "More pressure, Dad," I said, my confusion deepening. "Working on what? It's Chloe. I just got a weird text from Mom." There was a moment of dead silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the tinny, generic music of a bank lobby playing in the background. "Chloe," he said, and the single word was freighted with a universe of confusion. "But, we were just talking to you." "No, you weren't," I said, a cold dread starting to creep up my spine. "I've been in my apartment all day, editing." "Dad, what is going on?" "Mom's text has me freaked out. You weren't in a car accident?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "A car accident?" "No, I haven't even driven my car today. It's parked outside." I heard a sharp intake of breath. Then my dad spoke, his voice low and full of a dawning horror. "Oh my God, Linda," he was speaking to my mom, who he must have had on the other line or on speaker. "It's not her. It's a scam." He turned his attention back to me. "Chloe, stay on the phone. Someone called the house pretending to be you. They said you hit someone with your car. They said you were crying. It sounded exactly like you." Exactly. My blood turned to ice. "What? Dad, that's impossible. They wanted $15,000, he said, his voice cracking. "I'm at the bank right now." I was about to sign the wire transfer form. I felt like I was going to be sick. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. My voice, someone had stolen my voice. "Dad, hang up with me and call Mom right now," I instructed, my mind snapping into crisis mode. "Make sure she hangs up the landline. They might still be listening." I'll call the landline from my phone in 2 minutes. He did as I said. The next few minutes were the longest of my life. I paced my small apartment, my mind racing. How could they have my voice? And then it hit me, a sickening wave of realization. My podcast. Hours and hours of my voice, freely available online. High-quality audio, full of different inflections, emotions, and phrases. They had a library of my voice data to feed into an AI program. They could make me say anything. I called the house line. My mother answered, her voice a fragile whisper. "Really me, Mom," I said, and for the first time, I felt the need to prove my own identity to my own mother. "I'm okay. I'm in my apartment. I was never in an accident." She broke into wrenching sobs, but this time they were sounds of relief, not terror. The release of tension was so profound it was almost violent. My dad got on the phone and explained everything, the perfect mimicry of my voice. The story, the calm mediator, the pressure, the secrecy. The bank teller, my dad later told me, had actually been suspicious. She had seen this before. She was asking him clarifying questions, trying to stall him, when my call came through. We were minutes away from losing $15,000 that my parents had worked their entire lives to save, money that represented their security, their future, their peace of mind. The aftermath was brutal. My parents were consumed by a tidal wave of emotions. First came relief, then a deep, corrosive shame. My dad, the logical engineer, couldn't stop berating himself. How could I have been so stupid? I knew something felt off but her voice. I heard my daughter crying. My mom was simply traumatized. She felt as though the sanctity of her home had been violated in the most intimate way possible. A predator had reached through the phone line and held her heart hostage. And me? I felt violated on a level I couldn't articulate. My voice, something I had always considered uniquely mine, had been digitally hijacked and turned into an instrument of deceit. I felt a strange sense of responsibility, as if my choice to put myself online had inadvertently painted a target. On my parents' backs, I took down my podcast that night. I couldn't bear the thought of my voice being out there, a potential weapon in some scammer's arsenal. We filed a report with the police, with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, ICCEN. They were kind, professional, and brutally honest. The chances of catching these people were virtually zero. They were likely in another country, using sophisticated software, routing calls through multiple servers, and moving money through a network of cryptocurrency wallets and money mules. They were ghosts in the machine. It took weeks for my family to return to a semblance of normal. The trust in the world, especially for my parents, was fractured. Every phone call from an unknown number was now a source of anxiety. We instituted a new security protocol, something I recommend to everyone: a family safe word. It's a silly, random word that only we know. If any of us ever calls in a panic asking for help or money, the first thing the other person does is ask for the word. No word, no help. It's a simple analog defense against a sophisticated digital threat. Eventually, I put my podcast back up. I refused to let these criminals silence me. But my first episode back was different. It wasn't about the sounds of a city. It was this story. It was a warning. The technology is here, and it's getting better every day. We share our lives, our faces, and our voices online without a second thought. But we need to be aware that there are predators who are collecting that data, not for connection, but for crime. The weapon they used was my voice, but our defense was our connection, a cryptic text message born of a mother's love and a son's gut feeling that something was wrong. That's what saved us. We need to talk about these things, to share these stories, so that when that call comes, a flicker of recognition might save someone else. I hope by sharing this, you feel more prepared. Be safe out there.